What is up, YouTube? Today I'm coming back at you with another tabletop RPG video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 5 favorite tabletop RPGs as of 2020. Now, these by no means are what I would call like a definitive list of these are the best RPGs in existence. These are just my personal top 5 favorites. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Some people may like some of the games that I'm talking about, some people may not like them, and that's perfectly fine. You should really just worry about the games that you have fun playing. So, the way we're going to do this is we're going to go in reverse order. So we're going to go number 5 all the way up to number 1, and right before number 1, right after number 2, we'll do some honorable mentions, and I'll talk about each game on the way as we progress through my list of the top 5 RPGs that I enjoy. And so also, as you can see, this is a little bit of a different camera angle. I have a new lens that I bought, so if you guys like this wider field of view, let me know, and I will continue to use this lens as opposed to my other lens. So we'll go number 5 first. Now, this game is... This will probably shock quite a few people who are in the tabletop RPG scene, as a lot of people really adore this game, and this is my number 5 favorite, and I'll talk a little bit about why, but this number 5 is 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I really like 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. It's a great game. I've had a lot of fun playing this system. I've played in a couple different campaigns. Haven't actually run this one yet, but I almost ran this one. I had pretty much everything prepared to run this system, and then my campaign fell through. But I really like 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. It's a good system, but there's a couple different reasons why it's not higher on this list. So, the biggest reason why this is in the place that it is this system tries to basically strike a balance between complexity and like simplicity. So what I do like about the system is there is a decent amount of character customization in this system. You have a couple different ways to customize your character, a couple cool things that you can do to tweak it. However, they really stripped out the complexity of combat, and what I think I just think that the balance is slightly off. It's a good system. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like it leaves me wanting more. And in terms of ways the D20 system is implemented, there are games that I think implement the D20 system in a similar manner but better. And so I feel like this is a good game for a lot of general purpose. So like if somebody was to ask me, oh, you want to play a tabletop RPG, and they'd tell me it's 5th edition, I'd be fine with it. I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's play some 5th edition. It's not my favorite system to go to, but I really don't mind playing it at all. If somebody asked me to play 5th edition, I'd have no issue playing 5th edition, or if somebody asked me to run 5th edition for them, I'd have no issue running 5th edition for them. It's a fun system, but it's just not... There's nothing really special about it. So that's why 5th edition is where it is. So number 5, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I'll put these down here. Alright. Number 4. So number 4 is a game that's probably my second most used system in this list. And it is a really great system. So I use this system quite a lot, and I play all my one-shots in this system. So I use this quite frequently, and that is basic fantasy role-playing game. So like I said, this is probably my second most used system that I own. All of my one-shots I play, all of my one-shots I run, all using basic fantasy. Now, why do I like this game? So this game is really great because it is very simple and it's very easy to get into. Like, if I were to recommend a first-time tabletop RPG player or somebody trying to run a game for the first time, this is my definite recommendation. Like, if you're brand new to the world of RPGs, this is what I would recommend to everybody who's brand new. It's such a well-designed game and it's so easy to understand, it's so easy to play, and it's a great system. So, some downsides to this system is there's not a whole lot of character customization. So there's 4 races, 4 classes. That's it. You've got your elf, your dwarf, your halfling, and human. That's it. You have your fighter, your cleric, your thief, and your magic user. That's it. And that's all. It keeps it really simple, and it makes it really easy to understand. I also really like this game because it is a more lethal version of the game. When you hit 0 hit points, your character is just dead. And there is an optional rule in this book as well, where you can do, based on your Constitution modifier, some saving throws. But for the rules as written, that's 0, you're dead. And I really like that. I feel like it's very hard to die in modern RPGs, so I appreciate that aspect of it. And also, your characters never really get too crazy powerful in this game. They go to level 20, but at level 20, it's not as high tier as something like 5th edition, for instance. So it's a really great game. The rules can be summarized in I think you can get a quick start guide on the website, and I think it's like a 15 or 18, somewhere like 15 to 18 pages, and that's literally all you need to know to run this game. The rest of this game is literally just optional rules. You have some end game stuff like strongholds, and then you have a full bestiary of monsters in here that's quite comprehensive, and you have some random tables for rolling treasure and how to build encounters. And that's really everything in the book. It's a great single book RPG system. This is all you need to play. So it's one of my favorite and definitely most used RPGs that I own. So that would be my number 4. Number 3. This is a really cool game. This is a game that's actually been I've been liking more and more the more I get into it, and it became quickly one of my favorite RPG systems, and it's a really nice system. And that is a system you've heard me talk about quite often on this channel, and that is Fantasy Age. I really love this system. It's so good. I think what I like most about this system is it does the same sort of thing as 5th edition, where it tries to strike a balance between complexity and ease of learning and just like ease of use. But I think it does a way better job because unlike 5th edition, where you still have like the complexity of character creation, and it's still you have to teach somebody how to make a character and stuff, but after that the combat is sort of basic. This sort of reverses those two things. So like character creation in this is really easy. You have your basic spread of races, which is like your human, your elf, your dwarf, your halfling, your orc. I'm not sure if I missed any, but you have like your standard tropey races. And then you have 3 classes, and that's it. So you have your rogue, your warrior, and your magic user. And those 3 classes, as you level up, in order to customize your character, you don't customize your character right off the bat. I mean, you do some customizations right off the bat, but you get more complex in terms of character customization as you level up. As you level up, you start picking these specializations, and by I think 17th or maybe it's 15th level, somewhere around there, you pick a second specialization. So you actually have 2 different specializations that you give special powers from. You also get your base class, which you get special powers from, and it's a really cool system. So some other things I really like about the system over like say 5th edition, which is sort of a similar niche as this, is I really like the way that the armor system works. So every character basically has 2 defensive stats. You have your defense, which is your resilience of getting hit. So it's like your dexterity, basically, how nimble you are, how good you are at avoiding being hit. And then you also have your defense. And your defense is basically what comes from your armor that you're wearing. So you may be good at nimbly dodging, but you may still get hit. And your defense basically is your damage absorption modifier from your armor. So say you have a defense of 3, or maybe it's called armor. I think it's armor and defense. Can't remember the actual nomenclature, but say you get like a 3 modifier from your armor. And so if you were to get hit for 5, you would subtract 3 from that, and then you would take 2 damage. And so that's kind of how the armor system works, and I really, really like that. Another thing I really like about Fantasy Age is the magic casting system. So unlike 5th edition and a lot of other D20 based RPGs, Fantasy Age uses a mana casting system. So you start off at the beginning of each day with a set amount of mana points, and you can cast any spell you know as long as you have enough mana. And the cool thing about magic users in Fantasy Age is, even if you run out of mana, you aren't useless. Like in 5th edition and pretty much every version of D&D, once you run out of spell slots, you basically either go whack something with a stick or you hide. In Fantasy Age, you have a 0 mana cost spell ability, and it's basically just a standard ranged missile attack that you can cast. So it makes the wizard or magic user still a viable option after they run out of mana. So I really, really like that about the magic users. Also, you have a ton of different types of magic in this system. You have everything from you have your standard air, lightning, and stuff like that. Then you have necromancy, you have monster magic, you have wood magic, and other really weird, quirky types of magic that are in the system. So it's a really cool system, and I like that a lot about this. Alright, the second, my number 2 slot is one that I really, really like this system a lot. Obviously, as we go up, I'm going to like them more, but this is my favorite version of Dungeons & Dragons. So this is an edition of Dungeons & Dragons, and this is my absolute favorite version of that game. And that is the Dungeons & Dragons Rules Cyclopedia. This is basic D&D, and in my opinion, this is the best version of basic D&D. Not because I think it is more well written than other versions of basic D&D, and not that I don't appreciate other versions of basic D&D. This is just a compilation of all the different box sets of D&D, basic D&D. So you get everything from basic all the way up to master set. And the only thing that you're missing is the Immortals. So you get everything from levels 1 to 36 in this book, which is crazy. This is the single highest one, like in terms of books, other than the Immortals set, this is the highest level that you can get in any version of D&D, other than Immortals, like I said. Immortals, you don't really deal with levels afterwards, because it enters this weird, kind of strange territory of, levels don't really matter at that point, because you're so strong, and, conflict is resolved really weird. So that's why they omitted it from this book. But, level 36, that's even more than 4th edition, which went up to level 30, so it's a really cool system. You have a lot of playtime in this book. It also has a unique system where races are classes, so you can either play a fighter, a magic user, a druid in this book. You also have mystic. You have your thief and stuff like that. But you also have races, which act as classes as well. So you could play an elf, a dwarf, or a halfling as well. And so those are some I really like that because I don't know why I like the races as classes, but it just kind of gives the races a more unique feel. So you're playing an elf and it feels more, I don't know, it feels more unique than just being an elf fighter or an elf magic user. So I really kind of like that. And you have a ton of different spells in here. This is basically the most comprehensive single rule book I have ever seen. You have everything that you need in here. You have all the base rules that you would get from basic. You would have all the optional rules. You have a full bestiary. You even get two different settings in here. You have the known world, which is the world of Mystara, and you have the Hollow world, which they kind of intertwine. And I really, really like the setting in this book as well. Like the setting, the known world setting is really, really cool. And it's just a really comprehensive book. And so overall, I think my favorite aspects of this game are it's really simple to learn and pick up, but it has a wealth of complexity and material involved as well. There's a ton of material in this single book, and I really like that because it gives you a lot of different options, and it gives you a lot of different things to use when you play. So it gives you enough material to play for a very, very long time in one book, and I like that a lot about this. All right, so now we've gone through everything from 5 to 2. Now we're going to talk about some honorable mentions. So actually, I'm running quite high on the recording time, so I'm going to splice the recording here, and we'll come back and we'll talk about some honorable mentions, and then we'll go to my number 1 favorite tabletop RPG. Alright, so now let's move on to the honorable mentions. So these are all games that I really like, and I would love to explore a little bit more, and I personally really like them, but a lot of these, pretty much all of these books, I know I'm never going to play them, or I have a very low chance of playing any of these, so they're not really high on my favorite list, because if I can't play it, then what's really the point? So let's talk about some honorable mentions. So the first honorable mention is a really, really cool RPG. It's very unique, and the concept behind it makes me want to play it a lot, and there's a lot of really accurate things in here. So the first honorable mention is Colonial Gothic. So Colonial Gothic is a horror-esque, fantasy-ish RPG set in colonial times, and basically the best summary of a concept that I could give you is, imagine you're in colonial times and you settle the new world, and the further you venture in and explore into the new world, you start to notice strange monsters and like legends that the native peoples talk about, and then you basically face these new creatures and new monsters, and it's really, really cool. So it's kind of like a horror-esque game, and one thing I really appreciate about this game is it's incredibly historically accurate. Part of this book is basically teaching you a history about the Americas in the colonial times, which is really cool. I went to college and I studied history, so it's a really big part of my enjoyment of this book, and it's a very accurate. So, for instance, if you go to the monetary system, depending on what colony you're in and what different, if I can find it in this book, depending on what colony you're in, what settlers are there, you have like I think 5 different monetary systems in this book. You have the pound sterling. So you have, not pound sterling, you have shillings and stuff. You have I can't pronounce the French one. My French is horrible. So like you have the French monetary system, you have the Spanish monetary system, and you have the English monetary system, and it's all very accurate. And you have conversions for how many of the Spanish monetary system is worth of the English monetary system, which is worth of the Spanish monetary system. So you have a conversion there, and it's really, really accurate, and I like that a lot. But I really find it hard for me to see myself playing this because, number one, you'd have to find people that would be willing to sit down and actually read all of this stuff, and this can be very dry because this is real history, and sometimes real history can be very dry, and like teaching somebody about like 5 different monetary systems and how they intertwine and how they work with each other is just, it's not exciting. So I don't think I'll ever be playing this. It'd be amazing to, but it's really cool, and all the monsters in here are actual Native American legends, and some of them are also English legends and stuff. And it's really cool, and I think it'd be great to play this, but I honestly don't see myself playing it. Alright, the next game that's an honorable mention is another one that I don't really see myself playing, but for different reasons. And that is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the role-playing game. Now, why I like this so much is Buffy the Vampire Slayer is my favorite TV show of all time. I absolutely love the TV show, and I love role-playing games, so like this is one of my most prized role-playing games. I actually have 3 copies of the rulebook. This is my worst condition one. I keep this in my bag at all times, just in case somebody wants me to run a one-shot of it. I have it. But I have like 3 different copies of this core rulebook. This is the original release, and then there's and also a revised release. So I have this janky version of the original release. I have a nicer version of the original release, and then I have the revised version as well. And basically the only difference between the revised and the original release is the original release came out while the show was still airing, and so you only had seasons 1 to 5 worth of content, and the revised version adds the last 2 seasons. So that's really the only difference. I also have the Angel role-playing game, which can intertwine with this as well, which is really cool. But the reason why this is one of my honorable mentions is not only is it because it's a setting that I really like and it's a show I really like, I feel like it's a faithful reproduction of the show. Like, when you go through this, you have lots of that sort of the way they speak in the TV show is in this book. You have lots of little quips in here, which is one of the big things about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And also, it feels, when you go through and you read how the mechanics work, it feels like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it's well thought out, and it's actually a really functional system, which for a lot of licensed RPGs, you don't always get that. So it's a well-designed system. It's a really faithful reproduction of the feeling of the show, and that's really why it's one of my honorable mentions. It's like I also really like Stargate SG-1 and Supernatural, and they both have tabletop RPGs, but they're not good. They're not as good as this. So this is definitely one of my honorable mentions. I would love to run and play this sometime, and I can see myself running and playing this more than Colonial Gothic, because this is actually a much easier system to learn, and it comes with a bunch of pre-generated characters in the book, so it wouldn't be that hard to get somebody into it. I can see myself running this, but I'd really have to find the right group that would want to play it, so it's one of my honorable mentions. Alright, and there's one more honorable mention. And so the last honorable mention in my top 5 RPGs is one that I enjoy the concept of this system, but it would be really hard to find a group that would want to do this. So, and that is 4th edition GURPS. GURPS is a super cool RPG system. I really, really like the RPG system. So I've read through it, and the reason I really like the way that the system works and how you can pretty much play anything with the system. You can literally do anything you could imagine with GURPS, and that's my favorite part about it. And it's well balanced as well, even though it has so much content in it. And it's a really, it's a really intuitive system if you understand what they're trying to do. It's sort of like a simulationist RPG. That being said, I know I'm going to have a hard time finding anybody that wants to play this, because this game is super, super crunchy. Like, if you think Pathfinder is crunchy, this makes Pathfinder look like basic D&D. It's crazy. There's so much you can customize in this game, and you can really tailor it to pretty much any sort of setting, any sort of genre. You can do anything with this system, so it's very complex, and you have to know what to add and what to not add in your games. And also, the character creation is crazy in this game. So, like, this is just the basic set. The basic set comes in 2 rule books. This book here, which is the bigger of the 2, is just for making characters. This is just for making characters. This is crazy. There's literally 320-ish, 27 pages in just the character book. It's really dense. And it's so complex, in fact, that you, like, I'll tell you a little bit some of the skills that you can get in. It's so, like, so crunchy that there's some of the skills in here are just crazy. Like, for instance, you can have skills with musical instruments, which is not too crazy, but then you get into stuff like panhandling. Your ability to beg for money is a skill you can get. There's photography. There's psychology. There's physics. There's physician skill. There's philosophy. There's pharmacy. Like, that's all split up. Like, physician, pharmacy, physics. Those are all like things that are split up. Psychology is also split up, and those are all normally like in one skill. In a lot of other games, nothing is condensed in this game. Nothing. So everything, it's very crunchy, and I don't see myself ever really getting a chance to run this game. It would take a lot of luck to get the right group of people to want to play that. But yeah, so that is my last honorable mention. I would love to play GURPS, but I honestly don't know if I'm ever going to. I have a couple different books for that, but it's whatever. So let's move on to my number one favorite RPG of all time, as of 2020. So, and that is Pathfinder 1st Edition. Now, those of you who've watched my channel before and have heard me talk about RPGs before, this is probably not a big surprise to you. But there's a couple of different reasons why this is my favorite. Number one, I do have the most time spent playing this game. This is definitely my most played game. I know the system very well. I've been running a campaign in this system for 2 years now, and I love this system. So there's a couple different reasons why this is my favorite. So number one, we're going to get the least important one out of the way. It's the first system that I ever really got into. I started playing Pathfinder back in high school, and I've been playing it ever since, 1st edition. I've been playing it ever since. It's a great system. I've played in multiple campaigns for this system. I've run a couple campaigns for this system, and I've been running my current campaign in this system for 2 years. So it's a system that I'm very familiar with. I have a lot of love for this system, and one of my favorite things about this system is how much you can customize your character. There is so much character customization in this system. You can really create the hero that you want to create, and there's ways to do it. There's so many supplemental books. So the wealth of material for Pathfinder is one of my favorite things about it. I own about 15, maybe more, different books. I'm probably getting close to about 20 different books that I own for Pathfinder that are just character options. Things you can do with your character. That's not including like adventure books and stuff. It's literally just what can you add to your character? More feats, more spells, more classes, more archetypes. There's a ton of different options to do as a player in Pathfinder. Now, some other really cool things about this is it's very crunchy, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not crunchy in a bad way. I really like the amount of crunch in this game because it splits up a couple different things that you don't see split up in, say, 5th edition, for instance. Like, your skills are all leveled up individually, which I really like. I love the skill system in Pathfinder. It's one of my favorite aspects of the Pathfinder system, the 1st edition system, is you can level up your skills individually, and I really, really like that because, now it also there's some downsides to it, but like say your backstory said you were like a really good trader, so you would level up your diplomacy a bunch because you're really good at talking to people and stuff like that. And you can really elevate your backstory into your character and make it more relevant on your terms, which I really like. Now, there's some downsides to that as well. The biggest downside to Pathfinder is you can min-max it a lot. But if you run it with the right group who's not worried about having the best stats, the highest numbers, you can really get really creative with this. For instance, you can make a gingerbread witch, where basically you're the Hansel and Gretel witch in Pathfinder, which is crazy. There's one of my favorite archetypes in this game is called the Combat Juggler. And it's basically, if you want to use thrown daggers or something, or thrown weapons, you basically, your character in combat will juggle up to 5 items. So you can juggle like 5 daggers, and it acts like you have 5 daggers wielded at one time, and you can just chuck, juggle, chuck, juggle, chuck. And it's really, really interesting, and that's the sort of complexity and sort of the diversity that I really like about Pathfinder. It keeps things very fresh, very interesting. But like I said, the biggest downside is you can definitely easily min-max this. Also, another really big downside to this game is it takes a lot to get somebody new into Pathfinder First Edition. It's not a very welcoming system. You have to be patient with people and teach them how to play this game, because it's going to take, in my experience, basically everybody I play with, everybody that I've pretty much ever played Pathfinder with, I've had to teach them the system. So normally, from my experience, it takes about 2 to 3 sessions to really get the hang of their characters. So it's not as easy as just like 5th edition, where you just build a character and you just look at your sheet and it's really easy to understand and know what to do. Pathfinder's character sheet's really complex. There's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of modifiers on there, and you have to know what numbers to use at what different times, and it takes a little bit to teach somebody. So, but Pathfinder will most likely always be my favorite RPG, because number one, it was my first RPG that I really played, and I own so many of the source books, and I really enjoy running the game. I really enjoy playing the game. It's a fantastic system. It's a really well-rounded system, and there's enough material there to never get bored with it. It's got your fantasy tropes that people want to play. It's got a lot of different character options for characters, and yeah. So I'm gonna stop rambling about Pathfinder because I really like it, but Pathfinder First Edition, definitely my favorite RPG as of 2020. Who knows? Maybe in the future it'll change, but for now, and for the foreseeable future, it's going to be Pathfinder First Edition for me. I've taken a look at the 2nd edition of Pathfinder. I think it's an interesting system. I like some of the things they did with Pathfinder 2nd edition, but a lot of it I prefer the way that it was done in 1st edition. So I don't really have any intentions of switching to 2nd edition Pathfinder. I'm probably going to continue to play 1st edition Pathfinder for the foreseeable future. But there are other games that I'm looking at that might overtake this spot eventually. But for now, Pathfinder still has the crown in this category. So that is all of my favorite RPGs. As you've noticed, most of them are fantasy RPGs. That's just what I prefer to play. It's not that I have any issue with sci-fi RPGs or steampunk or any other genre. It's just what I prefer to play. So let me know what you guys think in the comment box below of my different choices. Do you like some of these games? Do you not like some of these games? What are your reasonings for that? And I try to respond to all my comments as best as I can. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed checking this out. Also, let me know what you guys think of this wider angle lens, if you like this wider angle take rather than the more narrow angle lens that I normally use. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.